to nobody.
Welcome back to Two Nobodies, everyone. Rupesh is back with you again. I'm really curious about this topic. It's really hot in the news these days. I feel like we all should be caring about it. Artificial intelligence and whether it's safe and what are the concerns should be. What are the future impacts? What are the current impacts? And so I have a really great guest for us all. He's the founder and executive director of Artificial Intelligence Governance and Safety, AIGS. Wyatt Tessari L'Allié. Wyatt, welcome to Two Nobodies. Appreciate having you on an evening. I'm sure you've had a really long day and now you're stuck with me for the next 90 minutes. So thanks for joining me today.
Absolutely. It's a wonderful way to end the day.
Awesome. Artificial intelligence, AI, this is like a really hot topic. Like everyone, you hear all the tech companies saying, we got to do something about that. Governments, I'm not sure how far ahead we are. Actually, you've kind of enlightened me through some of your work that the government of Canada has this pan-Canadian framework perhaps that's doing something, but it seems like it's all kind of buried. But I'm kind of wondering, especially with the big tech companies, when they ask for AI safety and that they feel like something should be done, I just don't know if I buy it. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. Like, what's the role of big tech in AI safety?
It's a complicated one. So I'll start with the good news, which is that the labs that are pushing the cutting edge of AI right now, so especially OpenAI, Google DeepMind, Anthropic, which is now allied with Amazon, they have very strong AI safety teams, and the people who are working on the safety aspects of AI are genuinely concerned. And so when you hear these labs call for coordination on AI safety regulations, and that we should take this issue seriously, that's coming from a genuine place. Because the thing is, they realize that they're caught in a dynamic where if they slow down, somebody else will race ahead. So they realize if they want to slow down and do the right thing, they have to get some kind of greater authority to impose some kind of either pause or regulation or some kind of coordination mechanism so that they can all not be forced to race ahead.
Yeah, because I imagine otherwise they're all just going to compete with each other and there's going to be this AI race, which I imagine is currently in place. Exactly,
yes. And this is, I guess, the bad news of how big tech is shaping the AI safety situation is that, there's the old saying, you stand where you sit, and they are in a position where all their incentives are to double down on being the first to deploy and develop the best, most capable AI. So they are causing the race at the same time that they're calling for to be curtailed. And because it is so exciting, being at the cutting edge of AI research, the engineers who are building, especially the systems that get closer and closer to human levels of AI, you can, depending on who you talk to, you can sense a kind of just giddy excitement and there's a lot of basically the ideal world in my mind would be that they'd all be operating on the emotions of wisdom and precaution and being responsibility for the greater society. But I think a lot of it is just let's build it first because this is cool and we don't want to miss out. So there's a lot of conflicting strengths forces within these companies, and I do think they're, on the whole, if you ask any of them, do they want a positive outcome for humanity, they'll all say yes and they'll all mean it. But they're in an economic and a geopolitical environment where if they slow down, then they miss out or they get left behind. So,
is there actually a business model for them? Like if this moves to human generated AI or like the highest levels, like is there actually a good business case for them to move in that direction?
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens in practice, but in theory, AGI, which is artificial general intelligence, which is the term people throw around to talk about AI, human level AI, so systems that can do everything that a human being can do, at least in the economy. Yeah. And if in theory, if you're the company that builds that first, and you can basically service out your system, basically rent out your system to everybody to do everybody's job. So if you could, I mean, essentially you could dominate the world economy, at least on paper, just through the ability to outcompete all of your competitors. Because the thing is, one of the really interesting and scary things about that level of AI is that you can use AGI systems to build even smarter AGI systems, and then use those systems to build even smarter ones. So you may start with a roughly human level system, but within a relatively short period of time, you're at 5,000, 50,000 times human intelligence, and at that point, like the if you're the company that has that system, or you're the nation that has that system, and the others don't, not only do you patent all future inventions or win the war, but it's just a disorientingly different economy and geopolitical balance of power, and so there's and we'll see what actually happens in practice, but there's I mean, trillions upon trillions of dollars to be made, even in the more mundane scenarios with AI. So yeah, there's a very strong incentive to be first.
How do you, even from a government standpoint, like, this is a global thing, so I mean, governments don't coordinate very well on global issues all the time. So how does this work? Like, is there a certain government that kind of has to lead the way, or like big tech is calling for a regulatory framework or regulations or whatever it might be, but even if it's just in the United States, is that good enough? Or I imagine there has to be some sort of concerted global effort on this, right?
Yeah, it's going to require, like, regardless of the path you choose with AGI, and there's roughly two of them. One, which is these systems are too dangerous, we need to like ban them, stop them, whatever we do to just basically make sure they never get built. Or you go the let's build it, but we have to build it right, so the safety issues don't destroy us. So in either case, it's going to require unprecedented global collaboration. And I'm keenly aware of just how hard that is, especially in an era of increasing geopolitical tensions with East and West. But it's I mean, the good news is we're all in this together. It's not in China's interest or in Russia's interest or United States' interest to have very powerful systems that can be misused by terrorist groups, or just by the fact that they're so capable, if they're poorly designed, or if they break down in some way. These systems, I mean, really could. They are humanity's number one existential risk in terms of it being having the ability, if things go badly enough, to wipe everybody out, basically.
Is there any focus right now from any, like, is there any focus on this on a global issue, like serious focus on this right now, or?
It's happening very, very quickly. So
Okay.
When I started in this field full time a year and a half ago, this was before ChatGPT, even before like DALL-E. It was still, like, you mentioned the word AGI, and like you were considered like in that case this wasn't going to happen for another 20, 30 years. And then people saw just how fast things are moving, and like, wait a minute, we don't know when AGI could be built, and it could actually be quite soon. Then there's a, like, it was not at all on the global agenda until relatively recently, like talking in the last few months or a year at most.
Yep.
There were like the EU AI Act was in place was being developed for the earlier versions of AI, which were already pretty disruptive. But like the future stuff, like the world's first global summit on AI safety is happening in November in the UK.
Okay.
And to give you a sense of just how new this is going, like so yeah, there is a growing group of world leaders that care about this issue, and like, for example, China is sending a delegation to the UK Safety Summit. The White House has been making some pretty big moves on it. UK, US are probably at the forefront. Canada used to be towards the front, but then we took the pedal off the gas, and we're now a little bit behind. But there is it's starting to percolate. The question is, can it percolate fast enough for the world to take action fast enough to avoid the worst harms? So
you're saying how there's a consequence in here for everyone, but are world leaders seeing it that way, do you think? Or because I mean, there's obviously other global issues, but not everyone kind of sees it the same way, which are existential threats. So I'm just kind of, we'd like to think that everyone sees it the same way, but I don't know if that would be the case.
No, so I would say, well, the problem is right now probably only about 5% of people have been introduced the topic enough to understand roughly what's going on.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I mean, if you're a politician and you're looking at poll numbers, I mean, the top 20 issues in people's minds right now, none of them are AI, or at least maybe the AI and jobs piece,
Yeah.
but like the major safety risks are just not in people's minds. And it's a little bit like, pandemics pre-COVID. Sure, everyone kind of knows you have to work on it, but really it hasn't happened in decades, and nobody. So it's an uphill battle to get people to act on it. I do think that said that like climate change and COVID have really shown the world, no, look, this is what happens if you don't act. And yeah, I think we're like we're at the stage with AI and AGI that is kind of like, you can see the first cases breaking out in the city on the other side of the world, and like it's a ticking time bomb to be free for it. And I think that there is those who get it really get it and are are pushing very, very hard. And I think that well, from what I've seen, like as I mentioned, just being able to talk openly about where AI is headed, human levels of AI, the risks around that, has gone from a fringe issue to a mainstream. You have like top AI scientists saying, "No, this is a thing we need to work on right now." So, and that in a few months. So there's hope. So,
what's your sense of all the, the world's public servants who have to advise all their political masters on this kind of topic, like the capacity and knowledge on this topic? Like, all right, do you think people are definitely playing catch up? Are we way far behind from an advisory standpoint? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, well, yes, I guess the sort of story is, yeah, we're there are very few people, whether it be in politics, in government, to a lesser extent even in business, and certainly to civil society that are aware of just how big an issue this is and how fast it's coming. Yeah, I mean, like part of what we do at AIGS is go and talk to everybody and explain, okay, this is the scale of the problem. These are the kinds of the options we have right now in terms of policy tools, and really educating and calling to action on key pieces. But yeah, we don't. I mean, the challenge is like there are probably only a few hundred people right now at the cutting edge of building these frontier models like GPT-4 and upcoming Google Gemini, and it's almost impossible for governments to poach those people to work in government and to advise government because the salaries are phenomenal. Sure. And also just, I mean, going back to the giddiness of being the first to build AGI systems, who wants to work in a government regulatory office when you can be the person
just
building?
Squash that, right? Yeah,
exactly. Yes. So you'd have to, I mean, have like unpalatable, HR resources to do that, and arguably it's worth doing it, but it's an uphill battle.
Yeah. You mentioned Google Gemini. I actually don't know anything about what the heck Google Gemini is.
So it's a new model, another large model. The interesting and concerning thing about Google Gemini is that it combines GPT-4, which is basically a very big model that predicts the next word, with the AlphaGo capabilities. So I'm not sure if you remember in like 2016, there's a famous case where the AlphaGo beat the best Go player in the world. It's a very highly complex game, and the decision tree structures that it was using was basically the system would chart ahead a few moves, see what was the best, and choose the best path. So it's combining that ability to try out a bunch of options and then choose the best path with GPT-4's general knowledge of the world. So instead of GPT-4 just guessing the first thing that comes out of its mind, it's able to try out 5 or 10 or 1,000 answers and then choose the best one. So a lot of the key weaknesses right now with GPT-4 could be solved with Google Gemini, which is coming out. They say in December this year. It could be earlier or later, but it could be another. There's the potential for another major capability jump of the scale of ChatGPT with Google Gemini.
So what would that mean just for the everyday users? So like people who are using ChatGPT, will there be this other sort of platform to do similar kind of things as ChatGPT and just more advanced? Or
of what I understand, they're gonna nobody's seen the actual interface, but it'll be a similar idea where it's either a chatbot or like image based or I mean, all of these tools are getting more and more conversational. Like ChatGPT actually, they have a new module where you can talk to ChatGPT and upload images to it, and it'll respond to you. So but yeah, so basically it's an even better at this point, I'm assuming chatbots, but
Yeah.
it's multimodal, so it'll take images and possibly video as well. So
Yeah. AIGS. What is AIGS about? When did you folks get started? Tell us a bit about that story.
sure. So we're basically a bunch of people across Canada who were reading up about where AI is headed and very concerned. And so we started with the question, so what can we do in Canada and from Canada to ensure positive AI outcomes? And that started off as just a community of people online on a Slack server discussion forum. And then in April of this year, we incorporated into a not-for-profit. And our goal is really to fill the gap in knowledge with both with the general public, and also do like active advocacy with the government to try to explain to politicians, look, this is what's coming down the line. These are the best available policy options right now, and this is the timeline you have to work on if you want to stop, the worst risks. So it's a lot of old-fashioned democracy, trying to get the system to work and to respond to this new issue. So.
Yeah, and are you getting any traction with the government? Like, do you feel like they're hearing you out? And
yes, I mean, it's obviously not just us. We were immensely helped by the two letters that came out this year. So the FLI letter on the pause for AI, which opened the discussion on AI risks from large models, and then the follow-up letter in a statement in June of the Center for AI Safety statement on AI being extinction risk. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's I mean, those are many of the world's most respected scientists, many of whom have nothing to do with the big tech, who are saying, no, this is an actual risk. If these systems fail, they could fail badly enough to not only kill a few people but possibly end everything. So that made that gave we're not a bunch of PhDs, we're not a bunch of scientists, we're a bunch of citizens. So that really helped us in terms of making the case. But then once they've made those statements, then there's all the hard work of building relationships with decision makers and stakeholders, and making sure that the right people have the right information at the right time, and so they can do things like pass effective laws or take action on the global stage, or engage the public in really effective ways.
Is this topic in your wheelhouse? Like, is this an expertise of yours, or how did you kind of, how did you fall into this?
It's a long story. So I mean, originally I'm trained as a mechanical engineer. That's my degree. But I ended up relatively quickly in the climate change movement because I've always been interested in global affairs and in public and at the time, like 2010, I was looking around, and to me, it's obvious the biggest issue was climate change, and so I got involved actually with the Green Party and campaigned my heart out, trying to push the political conversation on climate change.
Good for you, yeah.
And I mean, I'm not sure what I got accomplished, but it was certainly I was fighting the good fight, whatever. But then in 2015, I came across, first of all, this book called Global Catastrophic Risks. And it was basically exactly what, it's just a catalog of, alongside climate change, you have all these other risks. There's a chapter there on AI that really resonated right off the bat. Like I realized, no, this is actually, I mean, from what I learned in basic coding and engineering, and from the way I understood machines worked, I was like, no, this is like a potential dynamite issue. And so then did a bunch more reading, and then that turned into a personal journey where I spent 4 years researching and writing about 21st century trends, basically taking a step back from climate change and saying, okay, so what else are the major trends? What are the other major trends this century? What am I missing out on? And in the grand scheme of things, what should we be focused on? So partly from a political standpoint of if I get back into politics, what should I be campaigning for and why? So doing my homework basically. And so that's 4 years of turned into a short book called A Path Forward This Century, which was a look at all those trends, and it really came down to the conclusion that AI is, and specifically human level AI and beyond, is really the biggest opportunity and risk we face. It's the kind of thing where if you get smarter than human AI right, you can use it to solve so many of the other problems. If you get it wrong, then it's game over. Either way, all of our lives are going to be dramatically impacted by these systems, just because when you get to the point of being able to automate all work, suddenly that's a very different lifestyle, right? What happens
Yeah.
to the K to 12 plus college education system? What happens to the 9 to
Mm-hmm.
5, job lifestyle? All these things, like
100%.
these major things we
Yeah.
take for granted, are just upturned on. So it was yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. Uh, just want to ask you about politics. You said you ran for the Green Party. How are you feeling about the Green Party these days?
Also, I mean, I left the party in 2015, mostly for philosophical reasons, as I mentioned. Like, I joined the party because of climate change, and when I
Mm-hmm.
realized that wasn't the answer the world needed at this point. I mean, granted, we still need to work on climate change,
Yeah.
but in the sense that they like if you're gonna get involved in a small party, you have to really genuinely believe that they're the one they have the answer, because
Yeah.
they have to put up a whole bunch of stuff that the larger parties don't have to.
Yeah.
So I guess I lost my true believer status as green. But since then I haven't joined any parties. I'm
Yeah.
not apolitical, but I'm
Just
apartisan.
not card carrying member sort of thing.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. I've been to all the political party conventions in the last year or so as part of my work with AIGS to figure out where people's thinking is at on AI. So
yeah, is any political party talking about AI?
I mean,
What you've noticed?
to be fair to them, as with the rest of the general population and even most of government, like nobody is like, this is such a brand new issue,
Sure.
and it's also like unintuitive, and like it's you can't really, AI isn't tangible. It's not something you can touch and like, okay, this is and it impacts people's lives in very indirect and confusing ways, and so it's I mean, there is a lot of genuine fear around AI, like the polls, like there's recent polls in the U.S. where, yeah, like most people are like, there's 82% I think people want to slow down AI progress versus speeding it up, and there's a sense of like, yeah, this is, people can sense that, like, there's just the shock of ChatGPT, seeing an AI system produce more intelligent text than most people can write. That like was a real wake up call. Like, wait a minute, no, these systems are getting really good. And sure, plenty of stuff it still can't do. We're still at very low unemployment, but I think the going back to the political parties, I mean, everybody's figuring out what to do right now, and they're all, I can say they were, as of the last conference I went to in the spring, everyone is equally uninformed, I guess. So I mean, people, when you explain to the issue, they all respond, with interest and concern, and the interesting piece is like it's not a left-right divide, because a lot of the natural issues of the right and of the left are impacted by AI as well equally. So if you care about wealth concentration and inequality, AI and the concentration of power in the tech industry is a huge deal, and big on your radar. If you care about privacy or national security or public safety, bread and butter conservative issues, you also care a lot about AI. So it's we've seen it in the U.S. There's been like a nonpartisan Senate bill came forward recently, and it's also appears to be a globally shared concern as well. Even like the Chinese they have some of the strictest AI laws out there, because they don't want AI systems they can't control. they're even more concerned about producing hallucinations. So there is a real potential for it to be a cross-partisan issue. I mean, politics is politics, and it could become a partisan issue. But I'm hoping, and one of the things we're working really hard on doing, is making sure that everybody realizes whatever pet issues they care about, AI is going to disrupt it. So.
Do you know if AI is being used in like misinformation campaigns? Because I could see like politicians benefiting from things like that, right? Like obviously they would be concerned about those things that you just talked about, those other impacts, which are maybe much greater than that. But I could see also some people really maybe leveraging this thing in a malicious way too.
Well, and Vladimir Putin leveraged earlier versions of AI in his Brexit and U.S. presidential campaign interferences. You did, for sure. I mean, and it's because it is all electronic. It's harder to track. It's harder to who's saying where did the words come from, it's still relatively early in the game, so there aren't that many players who are harnessing it that strongly, or at least they'll be harnessing like ChatGPT, but in relatively benign ways, like being able to write their campaign speech faster, or write more emails, or maybe mass personalize an email campaign on a particular issue, but yeah, it's definitely. I mean, AI can be misused and is already being misused, especially in cybercrime. So
What level of technology are we at with AI? So like maybe walk folks through, like you talked about sort of the human level capabilities, AGI, but like
mm.
there are I guess currently and before different levels of AI. So maybe help folks understand that.
Sure. Well, so if you think of AI capabilities, it's kind of like it's the traditional like hockey stick where it starts out really slowly, then goes almost straight up.
Mm,
The for AI work officially started in the 1950s, and initially it was just basically randomly trying stuff out, and they got some it was mostly just foundational science, concepts, theories, but no practical
right.
applications. And it wasn't until about 2010, which is when you started getting Siri and your Netflix and your
And
various
that's not even that long ago, like
which
right?
is
Like
yes, exactly, yeah. So like
yeah.
very very flat. I mean, there was like Deep Blue, Gary Kasparov at chess, and there were a few other
Okay.
examples like that where it was, but it was up until the 2010s. It was mostly like the main applications were mostly just logic decision trees, so things
Mm-hmm.
we'd manually write in what for it to think. Um, the 2010s brought in this wave of machine learning. And for the first time, yeah, you basically, instead of manually telling the system what to do, you'd show it like a bunch of electronic neurons, a million images of something, and label it as a cat or a house, whatever. And then you'd ask that same system to look at the next image and say, is it a cat or a house?
Mm-hmm.
And so those very basic AI, like machine learning systems, turned out to be very very useful. Everything from like there again like voice recognition for Siri, or recommending movies that you're likely to enjoy, or
Mm-hmm.
yeah, even in like the decisions on bail and translation. There's like a ton of very useful applications just of the very simple ML systems.
Okay.
And so we
Where
saw.
where where are we seeing machine learning being used in like a malicious way? Just so people have a context for how that's being used.
Sure. Well, so I mean, if we're still talking about the first generation of machine learning, well, I mean, facial recognition can be misused by states, for example, to well, for example, like the Uyghurs in China. There's a
Mm,
lot of facial recognition used for like to build an almost totalitarian type state, and to monitor people in all
okay.
contexts.
Yeah.
The Trying to think in terms of like I'm sure there are quite a lot of um, ways in which it was used for in the past, but the AI really started getting used by criminals with the second wave, which is roughly 2020 when GPT-3 came out,
Okay.
and was made popular by ChatGPT, which is an improved version a little bit later. And at that point, ChatGPT can write code. So basically, you just type in build me a program that sends spam email to and this blah blah blah,
Yeah.
and it's able to just write the code for you. And it's not perfect yet. I mean, there's still make some mistakes. You still most of the time you need to have at least a senior engineer, human engineer, to
Mm,
make sure the code makes sense. But it's getting good enough that if you can use it on a mass scale, you can use it to mass personalize phishing email attacks, and it's becoming very, very useful for a lot of criminals to use it, and also impersonation attacks. So where they
mm,
like with a few seconds of a recording of somebody's voice, you can then train a system to speak like that person. So you could you receive a call from your brother or whatever it is, and it just so happens they sound exactly like that person, but it's actually an AI system that's talking to you, and
wow.
so that the whole world of like deep fakes when it comes to audio or video is increasingly concerning because you can't. Um, you have to start, you have to stop trusting everything you're reading or hearing, which is hard. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So we're still kind of in this machine learning stage then right now, or are we
Well,
where
so
are we at
I
right now?
would the first wave like 2010 to 2020 was like the early machine learning stage.
Yeah.
2020 and now we're in the general purpose AI systems. It's still technically machine learning, but the qualities we remark the most are like the fact that it's generative AI, general purpose AI systems, large models, LLMs. These are the kind of terms that are being used for the current wave. And
Mm-hmm.
it's basically they took those basic small models and just trained it on all the data on the internet with enough compute and a few tweaks in terms of the transformer architecture.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out these systems can say some pretty smart things
Mm-hmm.
just by through that mechanism.
is there any system or anyone that's kind of monitoring the queries like that are going through ChatGPT? So someone's like, I want to make a bomb or something like that. Like, is there anything that kind of monitors, or do you know, or
Um, Nowhere's near to the scale that they would need to.
yeah,
And I think so.
yeah,
There's a lot of they do like what they call fine tuning with human feedback, which so they take their base model, which will spew out all forms of terrible things which they learned on the
yeah,
internet, and they train it basically to not say those things. The problem is those mechanisms of making the models less toxic and safer can easily be hacked by persistent hackers.
mm,
So there's, for example, Worm GPT was developed, which was basically they took ChatGPT and they managed to hack away all of the safety mechanisms. So now it'll spew
okay,
out all the hatred that you want to spew. Um, so it's and the other thing is as capable as these models are, OpenAI is a relatively small company. They
mm-hmm,
don't have anywhere near the ability to intelligently monitor
yeah,
all of the hundreds of thousands or millions of hits they get every day or hour,
yeah,
whatever it is.
yeah.
So it's very much the wild west of AI right now.
Yeah, I mean, even the big tech companies, I think, like Meta has said, like they can't have, there's not enough screeners to be able to screen through every single thing, right? Like if in a
Yeah,
company like Meta can't do it, how could OpenAI? Yeah, very interesting. Let's talk about the impacts and some of those risks, right? Like
yeah.
we're starting to get into it. Like we talk about malicious use, like you. Oh, by the way, I should mention to folks, you folks have this white paper that's about to come out, which is we're gonna link into the comment section, but it's really cool because it really talks about the different stages of AI and then some of the impacts and things that we're concerned about with those different stages. So I'm looking at this table, and it said since 2020, some of the concerns around disruption to creative industries. That one, when I saw that, I was thinking, okay, if I'm trying to plan for like the future workforce, I'm like, okay, creativity, like that's not something that um, computer systems can do. But then all of a sudden, you can go into Midjourney or you can go to any of these AI software and get something produced, and from a creative image standpoint. I don't know if you've seen some of these social media accounts where they have these like social influencers that are completely AI. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
crazy, like that one stood out for me. I don't know how you feel about the disruption of creative industries, but
Absolutely. Well, and I think Meta just recently announced they're going to make a bunch of avatars in the metaverse that are basically powered by AI to the likeness of like Paris Hilton and a few others that'll talk to you as if you're talking to the real person.
right.
And in China, there's a whole business of like AI generated influencers selling products. It's yeah, I mean it's I mean the creative the really difficult thing with AI is never quite sure what aspects it's going to learn next because as they scale these models up, they gain capabilities and often they're not even sure what capabilities they gain until after the fact.
Sure.
So, like nobody, even in the AI industry, I mean, people, 5 years ago were saying, "Oh yeah, no, creativity that's a human thing. It will be the last thing to go because computers are all very rational."
Mm-hmm.
And then you realize, okay, no, actually creativity is is easier than we think, or can be brute force by machines. Um, so yeah, it's disruption of creative industries is a big one. I mean, they're a canary in the coal mine. Um, every industry is, there again, when you reach human levels of AI, that's the
Mm-hmm.
point where there's nothing left that, you and I can do that the machine can't do
Yeah.
better, faster, cheaper. So maybe
Yeah.
there'll be laws that stop machines from doing certain roles. But yeah, I mean, the if anything, I don't feel too sorry for the creative industries because if you enter a world where there is no more labor, and if we manage to redistribute the benefits of these systems, and so nobody goes without what they need, then it's a world of you need to entertain yourself, and like having a passion like art is actually a huge
Mm-hmm.
advantage over somebody whose job is far more mechanical or like building a
Mm-hmm.
tool. Where now that's 100% the AI system that'll do it.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, all I'd say, mate, they're being hit hard right now, and but they're one of many to come. Um, yeah, and then I guess the other impacts of the large models at this point. So yeah, definitely job displacement, definitely extensive like misinformation, and there's still, I mean, so the first wave and the first batch of issues we saw, included a lot of like biased algorithms. So they train their system on a bunch of old data, and surprise, surprise, it's biased towards certain genders and certain races, and so there was a lot of that issue, like trying to clean up the old data and also make sure that the techniques they were using were themselves not poorly designed. And so all these things scale up as as the capabilities scale up, and of course privacy is another one where big question mark. And then the question is then when you get beyond current models, which maybe there'll be a few more stages of AI before we reach full AGI, or maybe AGI is the next thing. We don't know. Certainly AI systems that can be increasingly agentic in the real world, so systems that you can task with buying you something, or going out into the real world, acquiring resources, using resources, interacting with people in intelligent ways. That is among the next capabilities to come, and maybe that will end up being AGI. But when you get to the top layer of when you get to the full levels of AI systems, that is a major overhaul of human life, basically, in the sense of like, even if the systems are built safely, even if they only do things that we want and never malfunction and do things we don't want, which is a really hard problem to solve, by the way, technically, is even then, as I mentioned, like your education system, what does a career mean if you're not getting paid anymore?
Sure.
You're not using it anymore. Like all of these like really fundamental questions around like how do you organize society, how do you live a meaningful life, and then of course with that level of technology, you can use AI systems to, extend people's lives in terms of fighting off the diseases that cause aging and other various processes. So and then you end up with problems like what happened if life extension beyond 150 or more, like what kind of societal I think there's just a lot of like all of our base assumptions, all of our moral frameworks, all of the like the laws we have are all based on the assumption of a roughly agricultural or industrial society. Once you reach human levels of AI and those systems get deployed, you are in another era. Basically, it's like going from like hunter-gatherer to agricultural, or agricultural to industrial. It's a new, like it is just a radically new way of life, outlook.
And do you see that as a positive? Like you see it as a new positive era? Like how are you feeling? Like what's your own personal take on that? Like are you feeling optimistic about what that new era looks like then?
So this is actually what I wrote my book about, trying to figure out, okay, so if we, should we or should we not pursue AGI or human augmentation? And essentially, I came down to the conclusion that, the most important thing, if you look at the grand scheme of things, is the survival and flourishing of life, and then, obviously within that, hopefully Homo sapiens and all the other species we currently have. But there's a sense of like, no species is the end of evolution, and as Homo sapiens, we have plenty of flaws. We have all the and so like, do we try to say no, we're the top of the totem pole, we're the best there ever could be, and so we're not going to build anything that's better than us, or do we accept that we're one chapter of a long history of life? And I think there are a lot of worlds in which we live very happy, lives, but very few or almost none in which we remain the dominant form of intelligence. And there again, even if these tools are well built, they only do what we want and nothing that we don't want. The fact that we're going to need them to understand problems that we can't understand because they're too complicated and make decisions on our behalf, that already puts us in a state of like dependency.
Yes.
And so I think there's a chapter in my book called Human Leadership, which is like right now we are at the pinnacle of human leadership, whereas what we do impacts every other species more than what they do to themselves, pretty much. And we are very much in charge of creating the future. But once we create that future and create those systems that are smarter than us, or offspring that are smarter than us, we kind of have to make peace with the fact that as a species, you become secondary, kind of like animals are right now. Dogs and dolphins and all the rest, live good lives, but they're not in charge. And I think that is the world we're headed into, unless you want to go like hardcore anti-AI and spend all of your time like augmenting human beings and fighting. Like it becomes like the scenarios in which we don't end up on top are not positive scenarios for the most part.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess that's all right. Hope that answers the question.
You have AGI, at least on this table. It says like anywhere as soon as 2025 or even 2040. I mean, there's a lot of unknowns, right? So you don't have
Yep.
an exact year for sure. That's not that far away, right? Like 2040, even 2050 is not that far away, right? Like I don't know. If you were to, I don't know, let's take an oil and gas worker from, I'm here in Alberta, right? An oil and gas worker, right? Like forget about the decarbonization part. Let's just say the threats of AI or this move to AGI. Like, what does a world look like for someone like that going forward? Like, what's the picture you paint for them? I guess I'm putting you in a tough spot right now, but
No, it's well, it's a really hard question, and the thing is, there right now there is no established consensus on what is a good future for, and actually, so one of the things we're calling for, and it's the fifth and arguably most important plank of our white paper, is a national conversation on AI, and ideally it'd have to be global as well, but just at least start with in Canada, we could lead the way on this, which is to basically talk about what are the possible futures with AI, and then figure out, okay, so what are the things that are non-negotiables for us that we absolutely want to keep for the future, and maybe we decide that is jobs, and so we'll relegate AI use to only very specific areas of the economy, or maybe we harness AI to provide us with all the basic material needs we need, and then but leave us the freedom to live the lives the way we want. I think. I mean, if I were to venture a guess, the things that we will remain in charge of are going to be things like relationships, family, hobbies. There are, when you think of people who are, for example, who are currently retired, or people who are so wealthy they don't have to work, that is probably the best approximation we have of like the good scenarios for humanity. And then there's also going to be things. I mean, like just another way it gets disorienting. Is like virtual reality is going to get much better. So for those who want to disappear into a fantasy world, like super high def, for VR, which would be so good that you won't even know you're not in the real world anymore.
Yeah.
That could be possible too. So there's a sense of like you could design the world in a way in which everybody is happy and fulfilled, even if so much of what we currently have no longer exists in terms of like jobs and the usual. So. So basically, for that person who, for all of us, as we're thinking of what we want in the future, educate yourself, join the conversation, think through like what would be a good life to you, and then bring that to the national conversation to help figure out how do we organize society in a way that we can, empower people to live the kind of lives they want.
Do you think we can organize ourselves so that we don't see a lot of wealth disparity? Because I don't know, it just seems like whatever the scenario would be, like the companies who are going to be launching this kind of intelligence, like maybe they're the ones who are going to benefit, but is that money going to be trickling down so that everyone benefits, or I don't know, maybe we don't need to use as much of our own income to be able to survive. I don't know what that looks like, but yeah.
It's a very good question. So OpenAI, which is actually, I think they're still formally a not-for-profit, and they have a clause in their mission or in their charter, the founding charter, that they will, beyond a certain amount of wealth, they will redistribute all their gains if they build AGI. And I mean, it's a nice idea. We'll see if it actually happens in reality. But the thing is, if you have, AI, if everybody has access to AGI systems, and it should be relatively easy because it's software and you can make 1 million copies of it, then like the any service that you want, you can have almost for free in the same way that you get email for free or like this. It's so easy for those systems that and relatively low compute power that so like in terms of like the services and even the goods, because the goods can be manufactured far more efficiently. You can end up with like desktop 3D printers that can build you food or TV or whatever you need with very limited inputs. So we could absolutely end up in a world of abundance for all. And at that point, what is wealth if you have everything you could ever want? Yeah. So there is a real possibility where you end up where it's like the egalitarian utopia where everyone has there's no more any want. It could also end up in dystopia where you have whoever builds AGI first, and there are also like hedge funds and other non-tech companies that are pushing hard to be the first to build this stuff, or militaries as well. uses it to dominate others, uses it to maintain control, and so there's a lot of like the trends we're seeing right now with the massive concentration of wealth into the tech sector already, even with current levels of technology, is likely going to continue unless something major changes. So this is also one of the reasons why we need politics and policy, which is we need to figure out, okay, how do we make sure that the benefits are shared?
And hopefully I'm not trying to come off as like pessimistic, but like there's two instinctual feelings or traits that we all have as humans: fear and greed, right? So even in that egalitarian sort of model, like if we're all in abundance, there's going to be scenarios, of course, where we naturally want to be first in line for something, or just those kind of those traits kind of come into play where you now force people into competition. And I'm not trying to be pessimistic, but it's yeah.
Also, I'd say two things. One, which is absolutely our yearning for status, and all the other base instincts we have. And there'll be some other way of getting status, hopefully a relatively benign way. But so that there's that aspect, and then there's the other aspect, which is more disorienting, which is you could task the AI system with rewiring the human brain and modifying our nature so that we don't have those base instincts. There are calls in some circles for moral enhancement of Homo sapiens to get rid of our petty jealousies and other negative traits and make us more fit for a more peaceful future. That kind of thing becomes possible with that level of technology. And and there's I guess I'm segueing here into more into the biotech human enhancement side of things, which is what happens to human beings if we can boost our intelligence, or if we can do a bunch of stuff to ourselves. That is the whole can of worms that's gets open. But let's say like a lot of the fundamental assumptions that we have about human nature could themselves change if we go down the path of using technology to modify ourselves. I will remain agnostic as to whether that's a good or bad thing, but it's a possibility.
Yeah. You have some other ones on here: social disorder from rapid change. You have destabilized military dynamics. Tell us about social disorder from rapid change. What's that impact all about?
Yeah, well, that's we're already seeing that right now, which is just a moderate form of that is the recent strike by the actors guilds and industries, and by the way, the longshoremen in Vancouver port. There is already some pushback that things are going there's a lot of stress and anxiety around the amount of change and how fast it's happening, and that could boil over into general public unrest, or get translated into voting for candidates that are more populist, or voting certain policies or other policies based off a conscious or unconscious disorientation from speed of change. So it's hard to run a country and to live your life if everything's changing so fast.
I'm someone who I think I embrace change. I think I'm pretty good with it. But when I see these timelines or what we're talking about here, I don't know. I feel like I might be a little bit more conservative than I might have thought, because if things are moving this fast, I'm probably not going to feel so great about what things are looking like, right? I can understand why there would be social disorders, what I'm saying.
Well, and it also ties into the whole risk side of things. I mean, if even if you are pro building AGI in the long run, and I mean, to get it right, there's a whole bunch of work that needs to be done in terms of consulting the public, understanding what kind of future we want to build, and then getting that kind of hopefully global consensus, and then handing that over to the developers so they can design that into the systems. And also just the time needed to do the global collaboration piece. There's if it goes fast, we are in much worse shape in terms of safety and in terms of being able to ensure we have futures that we want. And the whole pause letter that came out in I guess it was in March. People can by all means criticize the fact that it wasn't practical. How do you get the world to actually pause on this stuff? But
Yeah.
the idea of like, hold on a sec, we don't actually need AGI right away. Like maybe let's maybe let's chill out here and think this through. I think that is a very legitimate point. And actually, I was one of the signatories of that letter for that reason. Like it's when you think of like climate change, we've had like 50 years knowing about it, and we're just now kind of getting our act together. On this stuff, given the amount of global collaboration needed, given how disruptive it will be to people's lives, and how much still needs to be figured out just on the basics of like how do you design safe AI systems, how do you design into these systems it's the values that we want. Like it's all of this stuff is like a Hail Mary right now. So, but of course, if you're actually going to stop or pause AI, that is also a Hail Mary, because how do you get every country in the world?
How do you validate, verify that, right?
And then enforce to make sure that if there is like a rogue group in some country somewhere, that's there's a political will and technical ability to stop those people from building the system. And so going to the second piece, which is the geopolitical side. Like one of the things that keeps me out tonight is thinking like, at what point does AI infiltrate? Like, it's already a big piece in the Ukraine war, for example. But if we get a huge jump in capabilities and it becomes a decisive military advantage, how does that play out? And who deploys it first? And is everybody in a rush to deploy it first? So safety standards drop. There is Putin famously said in 2017, whoever cracks AI will rule the world. He's essentially right. If you're the first nation to build a superhuman AI system that can design the best strategies, react to your opponents far faster than they can think, it'd be like playing Go against AlphaGo, trying to beat a nation that has a superhuman AI. And so there is just a huge like existential race to be not left behind in this stuff. And and then of course you combine those systems with nuclear weapons, with like other and if the system there again is because they're being built so fast, because we don't understand how to align systems properly, like these systems could fail. They already have failed in lots of ways. Like currently they're hallucinating a lot of false facts and doing a bunch of basic stuff that we can't. We can't even control GPT-4 in the sense that we can't stop it from hallucinating. So like when you get to much more capable systems that can think, that can plan ahead, that have memory, that have the ability to command your resources, the ability to social engineer, trick people into doing stuff, like that is it is a big technical problem, and we need all the time we can get to figure it out, basically.
And we're having even trouble monitoring other governments for for example, the United States and Russia. I think they canceled their START treaty. Like they don't even. I think they're not even monitoring each other's nuclear weapon developments and all that. Whereas there was a long binding agreement that they would do so. Like on something like that, we can't even agree. Like I don't know. I know I feel like I'm sounding super pessimistic right now, but it's hard for me to see how everyone kind of comes together on this. Like it really will require a concerted global effort, right? If we were to get to a scenario where we can all see the true benefits of this. Otherwise, all these impacts that you're talking about, wealth disparity or the destabilization in military systems or social disorder, like these things are going to come to life. Like, I don't know, but you're right. Like the pause piece, right? Like, so pause from a big tech standpoint. Again, we all have to agree on that. But if Putin is saying like the race, like in 2017, whoever gets to AGI is going to kind of rule the world, like what's going to stop him, right? Like, like, I don't know. Yeah. But
well, the only thing that might stop him is the instinct for survival. And that is the base common denominator for every nation, every person.
Sure.
Unless I guess maybe like a hardcore environmentalist who wanted to destroy human race might want to use AGI against us. But other than those kind of like really far-fetched scenarios, no country wants to be annihilated. Everybody wants to live on and have their name in history and that kind of stuff. So I think like Putin and Xi are not going to be in a rush to. Well, they'll definitely be in a rush to not be behind the other U.S. on AI, but they will be. They are rational actors. They will be equally. They also really don't want to lose control of their power. So it's. It's there again. It's the global governance piece is a Hail Mary. It will require unprecedented collaboration, and open questions on how likely that is we succeed. But it's not impossible. And I think kind of like the philosophy that I ended up with, I mean, partly with climate change as well, is I mean, you just roll up your sleeves and you do what you can, right? I still, maybe I'm an optimist, but I still have enough faith in humanity that we're good at reacting to crises. So
yeah.
yeah.
This is why you're in the job that you're in. Why,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah,
like
yeah,
we don't
yeah,
want a pessimist as
yeah.
part of the executive director of AI governance and safety. If you were talking to somebody who's entering university or college, right? Like, and you know, and you're obviously aware of like where the trends are heading. How would you advise them on sort of how to move forward with their future?
Well, I mean, there's short to medium term, which is like before you reach AGI, in which case we're still very much in the old paradigm of new jobs getting created as old ones are replaced. It'll be, I mean, the treadmill of retraining will be more and more intense as jobs shifting faster and faster. But for as long as the current paradigm holds, learn how to learn, like learn to be flexible, learn to the traditional university degree is having a hard time keeping up, because often by the time you graduate, what you learned is already out of date, especially in the technical areas. Being getting really good at being flexible, learning how to learn, and also just thinking ahead for your own sake as to like what kind of a future do you want, on the assumption that most of your career probably won't be paid if you have a career at all. And how do you the best thing you can do is just be educated, engaged, and be part of the conversations that shape our future.
And what about academic institutions? How should they approach moving forward, knowing some of these that we're getting to AGI levels?
Well, I mean, we all have to make peace with our relative ineptitude relative to future AI systems. I do think I've been very bullish on AGI capabilities, and I still am. But like until you actually have reliably demonstrated systems that can do the work better than a human being, there's this really tricky interim period where we're currently in, which is it can look really smart, it can do some things better than humans, but then it'll fail in really dumb ways. And we're seeing this with autonomous vehicles. We're seeing this with LLMs. So I mean, keep your wits about you. I mean, there's I would don't dismantle universities just yet. There's still a lot of human brain power is needed, especially the critical thinking and to make sense of all the amount of changes coming at us. We have a long way to a lot of work ahead of us, before we get replaced by AI.
Why is there anything that kind of keeps you up at night when you think about this?
Mainly, so the scale of the risk. So literally, if you have the misalignment scenarios and the weaponization scenarios of AI, I mean, it's worst case scenario, we're all dead in 2 years, right? That's like it takes a while to kind of make peace with that level of risk, and then like okay. And the other thing, I guess, the two tied things are, one is the scale of risk, and then there's the speed of the things happening. Like if we had 20 years, we could, it'd be a lot easier to sleep. But given that we don't know, I mean, maybe it will be 20 years. Maybe, I'll be sitting in hopefully in a podcast like this, 20 years from now, we'll be laughing about how silly we were to think that we'd have a human level AI that early. And hope and pray for that scenario. But yeah, we could, I mean, there's this huge uncertainty. We don't know, like of late, many of the models have not been released to the public because they're capable, and there's a lot of trying to protect each other's leads. So it could be that AI systems are already way further ahead than we think they are, that we're much closer to AGI, and that a couple major breakthroughs in 6 months from now, we're at AGI. Now it's not because you build it that the world ends in a seconds, but it does mean that suddenly you're in a, like, the storm has arrived, and it's like all hands on deck, try to avoid the worst outcomes and harness it for good. So I guess it's the hardest piece is just the uncertainty around the timelines of human levels of AI. But I think as a responsible nation, species, you have to be ready for the worst case scenario, and that means we have to be ready like really, really soon. So I
think where my mind is kind of stuck right now is like we're we are all coming off this really disruptive pandemic, right? And everyone, there's so much change happening from that. There's this huge affordability crisis. Like people are just having a hard time just with pocketbook issues. I mean, there's always pocketbook issues, right? Like that's never going to change. But really disruptive event. People are hearing, about climate change all the time, and that's going to affect so many people. It's like, okay, to think about something that's going to completely disrupt us. It's just hard to kind of fathom right now. Like I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around that, like it's like, oh my goodness, how am I even supposed to plan for this? Right. And I know you said like, it's not like it's going to take some time and there's going to be kinks that need to work out. But even if it's 2040, like that's still not that far away. So
yeah, no, I mean, it's not fair, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You should be given time to deal with one crisis at a time,
yes.
And instead it's all just, there's the new term, the poly crisis, where you have like all the crises happening at once. I mean, we're headed into a wild ride where you have a bunch of simultaneous crises. I mean, well, I think this is like also why I wrote my book, which is to figure out, okay, so if you have limited bandwidth, like what are the things you absolutely have to get right? And I mean, I'm obviously biased, but I have very strong reasons to believe that, if you can get AI right, you can harness it to solve a lot of the other issues, like pandemic preparedness and even a lot of the climate change issues. But if you get AI wrong, then it's the other issues won't help you basically. So so I did I guess the plea is to as much as everything else is disrupting your life, and it's hard enough to just put food on the table today, find those 5-10 minutes in the day or whatever it is, in the week to educate yourself, figure out what's coming, because it is going to define your future far more than whatever else you're working on today. So
I want to hear more about your book, but before we get into that, I had Dr. Nita Farhani on the podcast, and she just wrote a book about just like how there's more and more insights into what we're thinking and what's happening in the brain. There's simple consumer wearable technologies that people can wear, and with the power of AI, we can maybe get to a point where we can actually decode people's thoughts. And so she talks about the right to cognitive liberty, right? Like we share so much of our privacy, but do we really want to share what's up here, right? Like we need to all be on the same page on that. And that makes a lot of sense, but it's like that AI kind of enables that. And she was talking about how there are governments out there that are trying to figure out how to weaponize that, right? Like how to actually change people's thoughts. She was talking about I think it was called the Havana syndrome or something like that in Cuba, that there were these US diplomats that would be going there, and there's something, they weren't feeling well after leaving there or something, and people think that there was some sort of targeted thing on people's brains. I don't know. Anyways, it's just that's just a small example, and that's probably more of a machine learning example, not even AGI. But it's definitely serious stuff.
Well, so the bigger picture is advanced intelligence, and whether it be through like human enhancement or whether it be through AI, it's basically person kind of agnostic. But the interesting intersection is where the human brain meets the AI system, and this is what Elon Musk is working on with Neuralink, and like the whole neuro rights movement, which is is still relatively small and new. But they're like the right to brain privacy, the right to not have your thoughts read and to not have your thoughts written. It's like pretty disorienting stuff, and also really scary. But I would say like if I wasn't working on AI, I'd be working on neurotechnology or neuroscience and biotechnology, because I think those are the other equally big issues.
Yeah. Tell folks about your book. What's this book about? You said you wrote a book.
So yes, this is it's a short book that took me 4 years to write. I was basically trying to answer for myself, in 3 parts, like what are the big trends, how do we make sense of it, and then given that, what does a path forward look like? What does a positive future look like? And it was so the of the major trends, like the everything I talked about so far, like the AGI being number one, but human enhancement, a big second. Other global catastrophic risks like climate change, pandemics, the other general technological revolution going around, like the non-AI tech. There's a ton of stuff happening in nanotech and I mean, blockchain is less hyped right now, but there's still a lot of potential there. Anyways, plus the environmental trends, plus other like rise of China and that kind of stuff. So came to the conclusion that AGI was the biggest piece. So the second question then, okay, so what do you do about it? Like, do you say no? Do you try to stop technology where it's at and say no, we have good lives as it is. We're good. And if so, if you say no, like, what does that look like? What are the implications of that? How do you even do it? Is it sustainable in the long run? And then looking at like one of the things I was really grasping for was like the political narratives we have right now are came from the Industrial Revolution. So either you're like the sort of the socialists or the conservative or the you have the and it's all based on the assumption of the human worker. It's based on the assumption of the human brain being the dominant force, and a lot of these like really basic assumptions that and so the arc of all these various political narratives is this is the wrong and we should do this therefore. But there were no political narratives to deal with AGI or to deal with neurotech or biotech, and so basically did a lot of research into like what are the forthcoming political narratives. There are a couple of fringe ones like transhumanism and singularitarianism, but I didn't like either of them because they were very much focused on the technology aspect. So first, from context, transhumanists think that the answer to everything is just to boost the human body and brain. That we're not the end of evolution, therefore we should just and that does. I mean, to be fair, that by boosting human abilities and addressing or like biologically eliminating many of our flaws, you can do. You can solve a lot of problems. Like for example, climate change. Part of the reason we're not dealing with it is because we're just not hardwired to care about it. You could rewire the human brain so that we suddenly care as much about climate change as we do about a spider walking towards us. Like you can activate the brain as much. So I mean, there's a case for transhumanism from the practical sense of like how do you go about building the better world. But the problem with them is that for them like the good unto itself, is just to be even smarter and even more senses and abilities and just keep boosting yourself. But there's a sense of like people lived good lives thousands of years ago without even the current enhancements that we have today of like technology and others. There's no like it's not a moral good unto itself that you be a smarter person or that you be more capable. It's just so that was the limitation with that. And the other piece is the whole singularity movement, which basically it's the singularity is this narrative that we're reaching this point in history where everything dramatically changes. And I mean, some people define the singularity as AGI, like when you build a system that is smarter than you, and then it's but there again, they're very much focused on we should just build this thing. No moral framework behind it as to what is like how do you decide that. Why should you why build an AI system instead of pursuing human life? Like there's no like so that's another reason. So then I ended up basically the moral framework that I ended up falling back on was the basic one that evolution gave us, which is we are living beings. We pursue life. We are in the business of existence. And I think the like all of the values we have guide us towards more towards survival and towards the ability to better survive in the future. And I think the narrative I ended up finding was one of like life stewardship. There's a sense of like the goal is not the perpetuation of a specific person or a specific species even, but the overall arc of life as we know it. If our entire framework came from that, that's your best bet in terms of like putting a stake in a moral framework and say, okay, most important is survival and surviving of life as a whole. And at a very practical level, even if you don't buy into that philosophy, there's the reality of first you must exist. Regardless of whatever you think is right in the world, to even know that the thing exists, you have to live. So there's the sense of like the lowest common denominator and the best collective framework to go with was one of let's we are on team survival right now. We always kind of have been, and that's like the pursuit of life is itself the good to pursue.
Wouldn't that be
so given
fantastic
that,
if that was the way we went? Like that sounds amazing, right? Like
this is
we
why
wouldn't have
I'm
any
slightly
divisions.
optimistic.
Like everything would be working pretty well.
Yeah. Yes. And so that's the ideal and then so the third part of the book is given that should we or should we not pursue AGI and that kind of stuff. And I came down on the side of I'm agnostic as to whether it should be AGI systems or enhanced humans, but I do think that if we're serious about survival, if we're serious about ensuring not only our own, about the welfare of life in the known universe, we're going to need bigger brains. We're already dealing with a lot of limitations currently. We're pretty smart. We're smarter than most animals, but given the amount of complexity coming at us, we're talking about already dealing with multiple crises at once. Like, if you want to deal effectively with multiple crises at once, you need more compute power. You need more knowledge. You need more wisdom. There's a sense of like, we're dealing with very old hardware, and whether we build AI systems to fill the gaps or whether we boost ourselves, we're going to need bigger brains. And so I came out in favor of pursuing technological development in the context of building systems that better help us survive, better help the sort of flourishing of life, but very agnostic as to what system that should be or how it gets built or in what timeline, whatever is the safest, most reliable, guarantor of future success. So,
are you planning on releasing this book or?
Yes, it was self-published actually a few years ago.
Okay.
It's on my website for those who want to read it.
Cool. We'll put a link in the comments for sure for people to get to. In your white paper, just to kind of get to the end here, you have a couple of key actions that you want the government to consider. So one, you feel like there should be a central AI agency for the government of Canada, and then you want you said based within the Privy Council office. So that's interesting. You feel like there should be some money thrown at this because maybe for capacity building. Is that the idea there or?
Yeah, so right now we don't have safety solutions to make sure these systems are don't fail, and we don't have really good policy options. So we need basically a ton of research to catch up with the speed of the technology, so that we have better options to keep the system safe and to know how to manage society and navigate this transition.
Yeah. $500 million though was what you're thinking.
Well, I mean, there's like hundreds of billions of dollars going into boosting AI capabilities, so like 500 million is pretty it's a drop in the bucket compared to. But because it's a public good, right? The companies aren't financially incentivized to research AI safety all that much, or AI governance. They're incentivized to build the system that can do stuff. So the governments have to fill in the gap of this lack of key abilities and knowledge.
Yeah, the third one you said champion and fund global AI governance efforts. So one example is you talked about that UK summit. You're hoping for some high leadership like the Prime Minister to be able to go to that. Any word on whether that might be happening? You kind of said that Canada is maybe, fallen off a little bit.
So we're definitely no longer at the cutting edge of the discussions. To be fair, we're not that far behind. But the good news is that I've read in a newspaper article that I was quoted a source saying Justin Trudeau and Emmanuel Macron from France and Ursula von der Leyen from the EU will be at the AI Safety Summit. And there will also be a Chinese delegation and I think a few other countries. So I think my hope is that report is correct. But yes, certainly like what the world really needs at a global level for global AI governance is for as many chances as possible to step forward and say, okay, what are the kinds of institutions we need to govern this stuff? Is it like an International Atomic Energy Agency? Is it like an IPCC? Is it and how do we agree to build these systems? What do we agree on are the acceptable uses? And basically, how do we avoid the arms race scenario that helps nobody? So you need voices like that to be in the room, and I think that's a voice that Canada can and should be playing, because I think we don't have the large AI labs that are building the cutting edge frontier models, so we're probably not going to build AGI first in Canada, but we can definitely be the adults in the room at the global level, push the conversation forward, accelerate the governance response as much as possible, and increase the quality of the debate on the world stage. So I think there's a big role for Canada internationally there.
Are those the things that you hope to come out of this summit, or is there, if you had your ideal sort of checklist, like what does that look like coming out of the summit?
Well, the ideal checklist is a united front for strong action on AI and a clear plan for how to deal with it. No, to be fair to them, like even the cutting edge researchers on AI governance haven't figured out what are the best policy mechanisms. Like literally, these papers are coming out like over the last few weeks and last months, and they're still like it's still very new. So I don't expect world leaders to be like ahead of the best research. But yeah, as close as they can be to that, the better, and the more aware they are. And I think so. Rishi Sunak's government in the UK has been very active and forward thinking on this stuff, and he told like the UK public service, do whatever it takes to deal with AI. So that there's some good signs. Like some governments are getting it. Canada has done, to be fair, a number of better than average moves. Let's say, like in terms of the Bill C-27 has many flaws, but at least there is a bill. They are thinking about it. They did release a voluntary code. They are, there is a good intention, goodwill, even if it's lost to be criticized still. But we're no longer the ones pushing the conversation forward. That's UK and US right now. Whereas in 2017, with our Pan-Canadian AI strategy, we were at the forefront at that time. So.
Before we wrap up here, what do you think? What do you want the takeaways for folks to take away when they listen to this episode?
Mainly don't give up hope. There's a potentially very good future waiting for us if we can get it right. Definitely learn as much as you can, think critically, get a bunch of different perspectives on this. In your own life, think through like what would you want your life to be if we lived in a world where there was abundance and no careers, and what would you like, think for yourself, what would you want your life to look like, and then help bring that perspective to the broader conversations publicly around like how do we build the society the way we want. And also in the meantime, like brace yourself for a ton of change, but just be part of the conversation. You're AI is not a citizen, you are, so you can the more people hear your voice, the more likely you'll have a future that you want.
Yeah, very good. I got 2 questions that we ask every guest, if you're okay with moving to those. So there's our 5 for dinner question: dead or alive, who are 5 people you'd want to have supper with?
Sure. So I'm a bit of a history nerd, so I chose 5 dead people.
Okay.
But Nelson Mandela, number 1. Definitely. Abraham Lincoln is number 2. I guess it's not really officially ranked. It's just Mahatma Gandhi, Malcolm X, and Wilfrid Laurier.
These are the greats. You got the greats of the greats there. They're very interesting.
Yes,
yeah. Why Laurier at the end there?
Well, to me, he's the greatest Canadian in the sense of he had the biggest in terms of what he did and his impact on the country. He's also just a class act in terms of the way he behaves, and as a former political candidate and somebody who still loves politics quite a bit, he was like an ideal to live up to in my mind. So.
Yeah, I don't think many people give Laurier as much credit as he probably deserves. Like, he doesn't come up as much, Yeah.
Well, it's I mean, it's time goes by. It's hard to. But I do think I mean, to be fair, McDonald deserves quite a bit of credit as well.
That's a fantastic list. No one can argue against that one. Would you have them all together, or do you think one-on-ones?
I would be very curious to see them all together, to be honest with you. But I'm not sure how well they would all gel. But definitely one-on-ones, and for just some giggles all together.
Yeah. Awesome. Last question. Besides the circle of life, what do you know for sure?
It's funny you mentioned that, because I was about to say, like, before you added the caveat, besides the circle of life, that was the thing I was going to go with. Certainly, like the limitation of the human mind compared to the complexity of the world. Like, we have this, tiny massive cells trying to model the complexity of the entire universe, basically. And so, it's not a lost battle. You can have very efficient, simplifications of the world that are, but definitely the limitations of the mind, but also resilience of the human spirit. I think we've been field tested on survival for billions of years if we go back to the first living life forms. So we are. I think don't count out Homo sapiens or life anytime soon. So
that's wonderful. Talking about the capabilities of the human mind, I have almost a 6-year-old, and she was asking me questions like, how big is the Earth compared to the sun? And so there's these interesting YouTube videos that kind of show like the ranking of sizes of the planets and the suns and the stars or whatever. And her mind was just, she couldn't understand, she couldn't comprehend it. Like it was just watching her kind of put it together. Like when she saw how small the Earth was compared to the sun and then the galaxy, and it's just like she doesn't understand that. So it was just we do have limitations for sure. Wyatt, really appreciate your time. This is a fantastic conversation. My head hurts, I'm not gonna lie. Like there was a lot here. I don't know how people are feeling as well as they listen to this episode, but yeah, just really appreciate the work that you're doing. It's an incredibly important topic, and we need people to champion this work. And so, thank you for raising and being an advocate for this and starting the national conversation. So important. I don't know how you have time to think about these other global trends when you're thinking about one of the most critical things when it critical challenges that we have with this topic in AI safety. So, thanks so much for all the work that you do and making time for me today. Appreciate it.
Well, cheers. Thanks so much. I really appreciate the conversation.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. Like, subscribe, do all those wonderful things, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye.